Hello, Clay Taylor. Hello, buddy. This is the Buddy Brighton show, and we're getting into the art of Clay Taylor and discussing the works on phi, electromagnetism, light, if you want to take it.
Well, it's all those things, yes. I mean, on my website and stuff, I kind of have the tagline on there, one great art, which to me, it's all just that. I find it's all interconnected. I have a hard time these days separating these things. They all merge to one. That's kind of evident in how many directions I tend to go with my work, but to me it's all connected and I'm always just exploring the same path. So we could talk about all of it.
Your work is very illuminating, to use the proper or maybe improper, who knows, but you shine some light on it, that's for sure. You shine some light on the topic of light. So, and you're all over. There's different. You have a diverse amount of work in your portfolio. So, where do you feel like hopping in and exploring some of your work?
Goal in your research.
Well, I'm down to talk about any of it. I mean, it's hard to find a place to start. I figured you guys probably have some directions you want to take it. Other point in any direction. I mean, I know we've got. I know you guys are both working on projects of your own, directions of your own, paths of your own, and I know that you've seen, common denominators there with my work as well. So I'm sure we'll want to go into specifics of those things. We'd probably want to ramp up to that point maybe and start off somewhere to take us there.
All right.
I mean, I could we could do introductions, I guess.
We could do introductions, or Brighton could hop right in. You're Clay Taylor. I'm Brighton. I'm Buddy, and this is. I was born in Brighton, and I'm Buddy, and the Buddy Brighton show. Here it is. Woo woo.
All right, let's go. Drive it.
All right. Yeah. Now, the art of Clay Taylor page is filled with these Phi ratios and their relation to our electromagnetic spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some very interesting things in here, how the fine structure constant has been approximated by you, Clay Taylor.
Yeah, that's one thing that, I came across in the math.
Pull it up.
I don't know, I kind of tripped upon that in all these equations, and I was like, oh, there's a fine structure constant. I mean, to a high degree of accuracy, it's not perfect to the codata value. So, where I put that in the article, it's almost like a side note. It's an intriguing correspondence. It makes me think.
The fine structure constant approximated through several tests. It's not an absolute. They have several facilities around the globe that test, and they get an average and they send them together and approximate what it is. And your ratio was, what was it, like 99.98 or 96%?
Yeah. And it's interesting, like when I work with these mathematical constants and stuff, or, I do, when I see how they might be approximated by geometry, a lot of them are ultimately approximated like to 99.96 or 99.98. Like I've got one where I ran into, I was trying to see, can I find a way to get Euler's constant out of geometry, which they, it's claimed you can't do that. It's claimed, it's a transcendental number, although you can get pi through geometry with just a compass. So, I was like looking into Euler's constant too, and I got it to like 99.98%, which is very high accuracy, but in infinity, it's also not very high accuracy. It's interesting how, I almost, deeper in my mind, I'm looking for, there might be constants that separate other constants, so something else to look for in the future. But that's kind of a side note to that article I wanted, and I could have put a million different side notes in it because I found so much in these studies. This article right here is, this is work I was doing a couple of years ago, most of it. And so I decided, well, this is something I want to share. At some point you have to put it on paper. This was a path I wanted other people to kind of go down, and I wanted to get this into the collective unconscious a little bit more and kind of show them something that I was seeing, because it took quite a bit to uncover that, and it was a remarkable journey for myself. And I'll never, these last two articles on light, they're kind of side projects to me, but obviously I'm fascinated by light and electromagnetism and how this all functions. And I have had a long standing fascination with color. So this is one that I wanted to give to people. And I suppose I should probably give more backstory.
About this image that's on the screen here too, right?
Sure, on this image? Well, on this image, we almost need to start with the prior article, which was kind of like the step one in the research. These are all ongoing projects. Mm-hmm. I've been studying refraction for years, and they're ongoing. There's like, at what point is the research project over? It's not. So it just keeps building upon itself. So I kind of keep these almost like working documents, like, short of writing a book or something, I want to share some things with people along the way. The first article I did on this, I titled it Color Theory in the Electromagnetic Spectrum, I think.
Okay, is there a search bar on your page?
Just go down to, just go down one more, that one.
All right.
So, I have kind of a long-standing fascination with color. I have a bit of synesthesia that I've kind of had my whole life. So color plays a big role in my mental experience. I've always, when I listen to music, I see color. It's kind of like, it's a mental image, but it's been a fascination since I was a child. So one of the natural projects for me here later in life was to get into the color theory, because color theory is extremely, almost too good to be true, as I've said in these articles. It's like, it matches up too perfectly. It's like, it's very fundamental, but it's coming from, from biological processes and things that modern science tends to say is like just kind of chance and chaotic, that we kind of evolved this way. But I'm realizing we are very finely tuned to our environment. And we're finely tuned to these very fundamental behaviors of electromagnetism. But these fundamental behaviors are very also mathematically profound and not easy to track down. And this is what this kind of project had been. So here we are, we're looking at, some...
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you think it all fundamentally breaks down to geometry?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's clear that it does.
Well, yes, this is absolutely. See, geometry is inescapable. It's one of those, what I like about geometry, and kind of like number theory as well, is that it is definitely true. Geometry is one of those things that you could have absolute faith in.
Now, this model, Newton's model, is incorrect. Yes?
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, our principles in this, like, of refraction is like Snell's law and stuff. Does a larger wavelength, refract at a different angle than a smaller wavelength? That is true. But this is not what a prism does. This is not how it works.
It breaks
into
a white section, doesn't it?
What was that?
It breaks it into a white section first, and you've diagrammed how there's a Phi ratio embedded in this.
Well, this is much more accurate. This is, I always say people's names wrong, but it just jumped out of my head. Gotha Jos.
Goethe?
Yeah.
Goethe's model.
But it just came out of my head. But, this model is much more accurate. He realized that there are discrete bands of color that are coming out of here, and they're interacting with each other. It's not such a linear process as Newton describes. So here we're getting closer to how it works. I don't think that this is a perfectly accurate model, but this is definitely much more accurate as far as the geometry of refraction. It is not a linear, red, orange, yellow, green. There is a process here. So, this image right here that I've created, this is kind of a visual breakdown of what I think people should be looking for. What we have are distinct bands of light coming out of this. We've got a red beam. We've got a blue beam. We've got a green beam. These three things come out of the refraction process in discrete paths, and they interact in various ways. And all color theory is ultimately going to, correspond to this. And I mean, this is exactly the model that all of our technology currently works on. Our computer screen is following exactly this, and we see it accurately. It's accurately reproducing, nature, because it's working on the same principles.
How exactly does absorbed light or subtracted light, how exactly does that work? I can picture how light emission in the prism works, but I'm not quite sure on the absorbed light.
Mm-hmm. Well, look at this image here. We're on the right-hand side, we're on a black background, and we've got a beam of light coming through this. Okay. On the other end, we have a white background, so we're, illuminated right now, and we have a shadow coming through this.
Okay.
So the shadow actually takes the same, refractive process as light does. Not necessarily. The light that is surrounding that shadow is going through the same refractive process that the beam of light would be going through, on a black background. So in this reverse process, what you have is the shadow. You're actually going to be seeing the shadow of, how do I say this? The shadow of green will be in one direction. The shadow of blue will be in another direction, and the shadow of red will be in another direction. And so what you have is the admixture of blue and green together as yellow. You have the shadow of you have these mixtures of the primaries coming through where one is subtracted, and those are the secondary colors of cyan and magenta and yellow.
All right.
So then on this image you see kind of here's the spectrum. You see these three bands overlapping. I've kind of outlined them on the left. You see the actual image. These are photographs I've taken. You see the actual image in the center, and then you see all the color taken out, and here we still see these three bands, where the yellow and the cyan is in this image on the right is actually darker in this red image, because
do you think those two like darker points and the shadow on the far right one, does that imply a shadow or a dark light? Like, you know what I mean? Like plasma has dark mode and arc mode and glow mode. Like, it looks like two dark strands in there.
Are we talking about in the spectrum portion?
The one on the right, image on the black and white one.
Yeah. So are you talking about the shadow of the actual prism that goes off to the right, or are you talking about the spectrum that's coming towards us?
The spectrum that's coming towards us, there's two dark shadows inside of it. Is that
so
just
those two dark shadows? Those two dark shadows are where yellow and cyan are in the actual image.
Okay.
And so those are the secondary colors. They're not as bright once you take out the colors, we see.
So this might be like an optical illusion where the band that looks like a shadow is actually almost the same shade as the floor.
Yeah, well, and it could be dependent on the type of light that you use too. The type of light would cast a different color spectrum, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So these are all done with the sunlight.
Okay.
And that's important.
Yeah.
Sun is a continuous spectrum. Mm-hmm. So all my refraction experiments, I want to use sunlight, and these are all sunlight.
Okay.
It's the top view of this now. So you see the three distinct bands. You see the three primary colors, and I in this article kind of go off on why there are three. That's a big part of it. And here on this image right here, you see the subtractive process is also distributed in three distinct bands as well.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this article kind of documents some of my original measurements into that, because what I was doing, a good part of what I was doing was measuring the distribution of these three bands in various ways. There's some subtracted photographs I've taken.
So do you think there's six? I mean, like, commonly we talk about 6 colors, 7 colors that are like the main ones. Do you think there's 3 that make the other of the rest of them and are invisible light?
Well, that's a kind of a loaded question. It's much more dimensional than that, really.
Yeah.
We have, part of why this does work is because this is how our eyeballs work. Conversely, part of why our eyeballs work that way is because it's natural. This is also how electromagnetism wants to work in a lot of different kind of ways I've looked at it. It's been the case.
Mm-hmm.
which is part of what this particular research project evolves into as we keep going.
Well, yeah, and it's important because you're using sunlight. So sunlight is what our eyes are used to. It's what the processes of biology are used to.
But refraction does as well. As the electromagnetic waves, the photons, interact with transparent matter, for instance, like glass or water. This is a natural reaction in the refraction process. So our eyes are seeing that. Here we have the primary color green on the right. We have the secondary middle color of magenta on the left. So it's coming out of, I've studied lots and lots of prisms, all sorts of manner of prisms and their geometries and stuff to make sure it was all consistent. This is an X cube prism. I mean, they're totally fascinating.
What does it do? What is this?
This is this prism will break incoming light into the primary colors. Different angles of it, you'll see the primary and secondary relationships and all the different kind of admixtures between all these things in different angles of incidence.
So there's more slides below that show this.
Correct. Yeah, these are direct photographs of additive and subtractive light. And again, I'm able to measure the distribution of these beams.
Clay, I must ask another very loaded question. How do you see light? Is it a particle, a wave, a quasi-crystal, a tryon ray? Have you taken any of these light structures and beamed them through Michael Evans' works, like the tryon and tetrene? Or what are you seeing light at?
Michael Evans, like glass or acrylic sculpture of his tryon ray.
Yeah.
If I were to do that, I would find the same thing. I've done it through all sorts of different geometries, and including the sphere. I mean, we would have this happens in refraction, period. This is how light will go when it goes through denser matter. It will distribute.
Brighton, can you go back to the previous image?
Yeah.
Sorry, you might be doing something. But I was wondering about the harmonics of the light and the spectrums, and specifically how constructive and destructive wave interference fits in.
That is a major part of it.
Yeah. And like interference theory, if you could get into a little bit of his work as well, because we're going to be interviewing him, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same information. It is entirely to do with constructive and destructive interference. I mean, we're talking about an open electromagnetic system where the whole universe is syncing together and either being harmonic or damping itself. So, I mean, as we go on, that's kind of what my next, the next article goes into, the latest one, which was the primary colors of Phi, talks entirely about that.
That's gorgeous. Your work is just so gorgeous. The more I get into it, the more I see so much relationship and how it works with just, yeah, like you said, you hold it up to anything and it's going to be the same. But this kind of raises the question, there's many different light sources. What about all of those different light sources, or suns, shall I say? Are they going to interact similar, but with just different colors, you think? Or would it be like condensed? I guess it would be all dependent on how dense it is.
Well, they're all, I mean, if you can see it, then you're interacting with it. You know, its information is part of our lives. They're part of our makeup. I mean, when you know, what I've been able to determine is that our eyes and our bodies and our planet and the scales of our world and our units of measure are basically synced up with our sun, which is our primary source of energy and, you know, the center of our electromagnetic field. That is also tuned to all these other stars. That kind of goes down into a holographic principle,
right?
Projection of the entire universe and its role in creating the scale of our sun and all of its energy signatures.
Have you studied much of the Don Scott's work in Birkeland currents, force-free field line currents?
I haven't gone too deep into Don Scott's work, but of course I know Birkeland currents, and I mean, Birkeland currents, we find these are things that are described in other magnetic experiments as well.
Yeah, on the smaller scale and on the larger scale, we're starting to call them the same name. We're seeing that everything starts to work in the same manners.
Yeah,
like when you do water bridge.
Birkeland is one of those truly genius original scientists.
Yes.
So, you know, what he observed as Birkeland currents, you know, and he explored scaled down models of planetary magnetic fields and, you know, in his vacuum chambers and stuff, and observed these currents. I mean, we observe these currents in a lot of magnetic experiments. That is how magnetic fields and electric fields couple with each other.
Do you think so? I suppose with my work, I don't know how much you've seen of my work, but what I'm talking about recently is going into these currents and being able to, I know it's possible. I'm just putting the idea out there and blueprints to find our way and to navigate through it, and numeric systems. But what it is it is going into the hollow fractal. The whole thing is hollow, and it's like if you could ride on a beam of light, you would be in the Birkeland current, and you would be in the geometry of the Doherty set. So taking that, and that's what Don Scott said about my work after he reviewed it, and that's with no writing to my work, just images. So I showed him images, and that's what he came out with. And so riding on this, the dawn of, if you will, the dawn of electricity here, talking about this, we can envision going down and getting into these and rewinding light in what I call, for lack of a better term, because it should be called something, the I3. Interpret it with what you will, but kind of like the Internet 3, and where we start going cosmic surfing into the Akasha through these geometries. There's devices that will be and are able to obtain this light. You can get light core samples from zodiacal light from old stars that's falling on us all the time. we can collect that light and get light core samples and reverse that through the same process of how light works of mirrors, and rewind it or unwind it and get the information. I believe we will be able to actually go into it, and this is like the universal internet. And I'm kind of starting a game, and it's a game where we start playing with these filaments because they're numbered now, and when you go out into them, there's things that start happening because they're based off of a scale. It's all the same way as light works. They're all logarithmic or scalar waves, if you want to call it, coming out from the source center of light in the inverse square and the inverse cube ratios. So we can build these machines, and it's like a Birkeland current, but a reverse Birkeland current that follows the same star as it goes, and it's I know we can dynamically start playing with this information and start experientially going into it ourselves and experiencing the life of an octopus as it's changing colors, passively, not interfering with the octopus itself. And I think that humans from the future are already doing this to animals and through birds, so you can really get a bird's eye view, literally. You're going to go into the umvelt of the creature, which is the fossilized neural network of the individual creatures, and this is all like perfect fodder for a book. Like this is great. But going into these, I mean, I don't want to digress too far, but I also want to progress as well and look at the futurism aspect of what are we going to do with this information? How are we going to use this information to continue to grow the cycle of light that we are currently in? Because all animals are cycles of light. So the current cycle of light that we're in, and the current brain that we're building, our brains, if we believe that our brains are building off of one layer off of another, we're currently building new brains in our brains right now, new parts in our brains.
New neurons are forming.
Yeah, whatever it is, neurogenesis. And neurogenesis happens with lots of drugs. Sorry, Brighton, what's that?
Biophotons, bioelectrons, they're how to connect them and how to get in touch with the internet through, like, or the universe through our biophotons and bioelectrons.
Yes. Our brains are already equipped to do what I'm talking about, to traverse through these Birkeland currents. And science, I mean, a lot of people have not given credence to seers and visionaries throughout the past, but there's a reason why you can see through the ether, because it does exist, and it's a refraction and it's mimicry on all scales. Everything is mimicking everything it wants to be. It desires touch. Every animal, every little insect wants to be touched, desires. It looks up at a leaf and it's like, that's a beautiful leaf. And then it starts to turn into that leaf through desire and beauty. And you want to think about it's just survival of the fittest. No, it's not. Bitch, cut your head off and I'm the winner. No, it's not. Winner, chicken dinner. It's most creatures are passive to all other creatures. They will look at them and they'll walk by and they'll coexist. Some of them don't acknowledge each other. But I digress too far before I get into trophic cascades.
I wanted to point something out.
You kind of just described a trip of meditation to me. I mean, you discussed a lot of ideas right there, from animal brains and consciousness to, the hollow fractal field to Birkeland currents. I mean, it's the more you learn about how it works, the better you understand what's happening with your mind, and the more accurate your meditations can be, I think, and the more effective they can be for sure. And the more creative, like you just kind of touched upon a lot of different kinds of consciousness, and you touched a little bit about how all life kind of shares similar emotions and curiosities
Mm-hmm.
and competition while it's trying to survive. I mean, you described sort of the circle of life there a little bit.
Well, to go a little bit further, it breaks down into Lichtenberg figures to the same pattern as lightning. Everything, I think, we all go into the soil. Every catastrophic event, everything goes into the soil. All the creatures, the memory, and it becomes part of the mycelial network. And between the mycelial network, the fungus, and the sun, the memory is there with the sun, with the filaments constantly bombarding the earth. When the fungus grows us back up into what we are again, because they're at the wit's end, they're at the fringes of the life cycle, the life and death cycle. And you look at that geometry, it's networking, it's the brain, it's this information is completely accessible. We just got to get the right minds looking at it. And this is what neural net is doing in Elon Musk. And that's why like 80% of his, I don't know the percentage, sorry, I don't want to throw a random number out there, but a large number of his employees are on the autistic and Asperger's spectrum, because like how they do art and math, they do that same thing with their brain thinking. When you show them how to build new neural structures, they're genius at it. It's what life is. And this is like allowing them to thrive, giving a place for them to grow, but it's in a way using them to advance mankind. But everybody's using everybody. We're all here as a collective. It's about giving the information and what can we do with it? How can we share it? How can we put it on a pedestal and let everybody see this information and how it relates to your life?
Well, we're talking about the function of nature, and ultimately we're trying to uncover specific ways it works in its math and stuff. I mean, you could look at nature for an eternity and you'll see it expressing itself off the same principles forever. There is a process that I'm interested in, which I want to find the true fundamentals that are always consistent. And this is at the heart of atomic theory, the heart of what magnetism is, what electricity is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really try to, pull back all the mycelium and all the branches and all the leaves and all that. And I've been concerned with finding the specifics of ultimately how it's functioning, because there is a consistency to it all. I mean, what we measure as the electron has been consistent all along. That fact is that there is a process. There is something to truly be discovered. And once we truly understand electromagnetism and the atomic maths at the most effective level possible, which is, its fundamental being, its true, real model. I mean, from there, things will blow up. And I mean, that's why I study things. I think one of my methods is to find the most simple way to look at something possible. You know, I don't need a particle accelerator to completely map the refractive index of the shape of a sphere, you know, or the lensing geometries of a sphere, you know, with the light of the sun. And just by doing that, and similar, very fundamental experiments, including with magnets, and I've found a lot of information. And I mean, ultimately, you know, getting back into the light refraction research projects, you know, I was able to deduce the mathematical equations and the sets of the geometry that is occurring in the creation of everything that we see and all the colors that we see. And, you know, I think we should probably jump more specifically into what that means. Because you brought up, well, one of you did, constructive and destructive interference. You have a mathematical set called the Doherty set.
Yeah.
Brighton has been getting into tiling, and this is all related. So, you know, this, yeah, you know, Brian and I, you know, we've been talking a little bit, and, you know, he's been doing cool stuff with 3D modeling, and, you know, I knew I wanted to kind of throw him for, you know, down a rabbit hole and give him a trip. And hey, dude, you should, you know, see if you could backtrack to see what kind of geometry tiling creates this image right here, which is when he got into, you know, studying the quasi crystals. And
before I jump into the tiling and the quasi-crystals of this set, I was hoping to get into, in your article, you had stated that there is two main ratios that you're looking at, which are the, if I could pull it right up.
We should start there. You're right.
And it's a tale of two ratios, and you speak that we have two main ratios, which is a doubling ratio from 0 to 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32. It keeps doubling.
Yeah.
And we can find that in octaves, like A to A is 8 octaves apart, or we could put the 12 notes in between and have it. Or we could put all these other systems in it. But you see that the second ratio that you find most important is the Phi ratio. And
yeah, so I would say, you know, I wanted to highlight these two ratios, and I think that they are pretty much the most fundamental. I mean, I do say that I find all mathematical ratios interconnected, of course. So they all are existent. I would say it is, you know, it is a mistake to say that, you know, to give a linear process to anything other than, like, I mean, we have to see one as equal to infinity, you know? They're two sides of the same coin. They're equally codependent. So one of my processes early on is to realize that the linearity that we humans tend to try to use to define things, like this gives birth to this, gives birth to this, gives birth to this, is actually, it all already exists. But I wanted to highlight those two ratios because they are examples of the, you know, total harmony, which is the octave. You know, it's like the, I mean, fundamental of like music theory. It's like, you know, that's the same tonal quality, right? So all music theory is based on, is framed by the octave. We say it's the same note. So, you know, it repeats over and over again. They have the same tonality.
have you been able to scale what Phi is on the guitar? Like, are you able to play that?
Yeah.
Ascending by Phi.
Yeah, I think it was, you know, one chromatic, one chromatic node away from perfect fifth is an approximation of phi. I think it was 8/5 ratio, you know. So
bringing the Clay-Taylor set back to the Dougherty set and relating these, I was hoping to point out that how the Dougherty set works, if you don't mind me getting into some of the mathematics, James.
Sure.
Okay. Well, it starts at a point, and a linear equation that doubles. So we could start with epsilon, which is an infinitesimal quantity, or we could take that as a whole number. It's just the first term. It technically starts with epsilon, an infinitesimal quantity, but so it goes, the first radius out from the center is 1 epsilon, and then the second radius out, its radius is worth 2 epsilon, and then the third radius out is worth 4 epsilon and 8 epsilon. Or we could take that as in numeric terms as first ratio whole numbers, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and it keeps doubling. But not only that, within the Dougherty set, there are these ratios of phi. Here, James has one of his scaling devices that shows phi to 1 ratios. And they nest within each other. Both of these nest perfectly within each other. And he's been able to create this in a decagon as well as a dodecagon and many other structures. So I was hoping to relate this back to the tiling of the quasi-crystal and the magnetics. I think there's a huge potential to understand, the ultimate, a universal structure, the equilibrium that it seeks, or the quantum foam of or cellular automaton of light. Through
I want to ask Buddy about his set. I think we should finish some of the thoughts regarding like that tale of two ratios part.
Yeah.
So what you have with the doubling sequence is, the octave, that is, framing all, musical scales, all harmony. We have from there the whole harmonic series. So that goes from 1 to infinity, right? Where it divides itself equally and subdivides itself equally. Now, that would seem to take up the entire number line. It would fill out every little point of eternity, but it doesn't. That harmonic series is the world of resonance. And then there are actually mathematically more numbers that are irrational, or, places that fit in between all these other numbers. So these are these, irrational and transcendental numbers that slip through the cracks. Phi is kind of the first of these. It is its own reciprocal. And, there's been a million books written on Phi. It's profound, but it is, this is a damping ratio. As I described in the article, speaker enclosures that want to avoid resonance with any one frequency, which would be, destructive. Resonance is actually, it can be a destructive process. What it will do is it will favor one sort of harmony, and it can go off, which would be catastrophic in nature. If you had improper resonances between stars, they'd all be on it would not be stable.
Instead, they very rarely, seldom crash into each other because they spiral around each other, as we just recently saw the moon on, I forget which planet, start spiraling around another moon.
Yep, exactly. These damping ratios are as important as harmony in creating a stable universe. So Phi is one of those. The other big one is Euler's number, E, which is its own derivative. So you have the, phi is its own reciprocal. Euler's number is its own derivative, where, Euler's number, I think, is stable over time, which seems to be found in like inertial masses that need to avoid resonance over periods of change and time. So that's another big one. So it's like, these are kind of the two. I would also put Euler's number up there as well, but it's highlighting the same principle between resonance and damping. But
Euler's number
be, realized to be as, if not more, well, as important to resonance as the other side of the coin. It's not necessarily dissonance, but it's how we have distribution of things that are lasting. Whether it's
number.
P and phi is, I find, is clearly distributing, light through refraction, which to me means that there are, this is an electromagnetic process where it finds stability in its wave system.
Like a minimal energy configuration.
It's finding stability here in Phi ratios, and it's fitting into the octave. The electromagnetic waves from the sun, has its fundamental tone. It has its realm of resonance. But what we find here through absorption is distributions in this Phi ratio that correspond to absorption. Whereas I think in orbiting bodies, we'll find more like Euler's number as it avoids collisions between masses and stuff. So with that in mind, that is how you should be looking at what these ratios mean mathematically. From there, like, buddy, your set, I've looked at it. Obviously I see a bit of harmonic series in there, and I did note the doubling ratios. I did not, I was not able to, get into one of your Facebook pictures of it and really get high level of detail. But from what I've noted is you've got kind of a harmonic series here, or you've got, a set of waves, and you're taking the doubling sequence from, each of these waves and seeing where it overlaps with each other. I would like you to talk about that, and I would like you to say, hey, why did you name it the Doherty set? And then please speak to the laws of this set.
Thank you for asking those questions. I guess I'll start with where my mind was on Euler's number and how it relates to propagation and growth, and the growing dynamic of things, and accumulation. And I see here that. Oh, and another question that I wanted to ask real quick before I get into it is, what do you think? Do you think light is, like Jason Verbelli says, spherical propagations?
Yes.
So here, I'll pull up.
So we can all hang on a second, Brighton. Do you agree that light is spherical propagations? And whether it's moving or not doesn't matter, because that structure itself can build the perturbations that are necessary for light. Because some people believe that light moves, some people believe that light doesn't move.
Well, let me go back to my answer really quick. I say yes, but at the same time, obviously, it's another loaded question as well.
Right.
There is a spherical aspect to a traveling wave from a source.
Mm-hmm.
There are atomic processes, subatomic processes that should be that give meaning to the idea of a photon that can have so many different types of geometry to them. And the propagations of what the resulting waves would be could be different shapes as well. It's really hard to describe.
Right.
But you would have to say a traveling wave would expand spherically. And, you know, you also need to take in both directions of wave, and you have to take in the laws of projection. I mean, what is true is there is an inverse square law to an expanding traveling wave that from a source is essentially spherical.
Yeah, and I mean, we're getting into the substance and the nitty gritty of this, and this is what I like here, because when Voyager 2 just crossed the heliosphere, and the heliosphere is the edge of the solar system, and the first one went through, the second one went through, and what they observed is there is a plasma foam, a plasma vortex, like vortexture foam, that's like a bow shock around the whole entire, and it's really hot. And that's just pointing towards the electric universe and the electric universe paradigm and the electric geometry. And what we're talking about here is the accumulation of all of this spin. Where does all this spin go? It goes, I mean, okay, that's neither here nor there, but there is clearly an accumulation on the edge of the solar system.
Yeah,
and then
I expected that. And so I was glad. I mean, that's an awesome achievement for mankind. I mean, to get out to the, to the bubble of our solar system and detect the transition between, one density to another. I mean, I'm glad that we're all alive during that. It's awesome. And, you can measure that. Like I could, we can take those distances and really start to map out the universe in a much better way. I mean, I would love to have more and more and more and more measurements like that. Now I can't, send a satellite out there to go do it myself, but I'm glad that we have, scientific projects that have done that we can rely on, gather their information and put it to test. Yeah.
So hopping into these tendrils or these filaments and how they filament off of the sun. This basic thing that I've been on this past year is my hayride or whatever, my hoorah has been fractals, frequencies, and filaments, and how it all kind of breaks down to these types of structures. And you have compression and rarefaction, which is just like the pressure and the release of pressure, which provides the systolic pump for life to throb and thrive in all systems. You have to have that dynamic throbbing thrust and pump. And I've found that the thrusting at the heart of the universe is that dynamic between each wave field. There is Phi. I have this golden mean caliper, and I've been playing with it for a long time. I initially bought one online. It was stainless steel for like $105, $115. It was a dentist tool. Nobody was selling them.
$161.08.
Well, I mean, it broke my bank back in the day. This was like 10 years ago. I'm like, dude, you can't find one for cheaper than this online?
Maybe they should have tried $16.18.
I designed
$1.23.
Actually, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that is.
0.85 cents or 0.68 cents or. That's one of the things with Phi that this article was really about was, the 1.618 or the 0.618 is just like the front door to the universe of math that is these Phi damping ratios, this Phi fractal. I mean, it's a universe. I mean, and like I said, there are more irrational numbers than there are rational numbers. So there's a lot to be discovered. Not so much. Well, yeah, sure. Everyone needs to discover everything unto themselves. There's a universe of math in there. It's really amazing. And so to find it correspond to light and absorption of electromagnetic waves and the refraction of electromagnetic waves was awesome. And it was a major math project to break it down.
If we look at the set, expansion, waveforms, spherical expansion, where if you have a wave, it has an origin, point of origin, and from there it generates more sonic waves, more sonic spheres. And we can kind of see this in what Buddy had drafted here over the Dougherty set as a decagon.
Yeah, so Clay, I don't know if you know this, but I redrafted this last month, 20 days ago or so, and I did it in the deca instead of the dodeca, and it's a completely different structure, and it's producing different things that I've never studied yet. And your set was one of the first things that came to Brighton's mind. Brighton was actually the one who encouraged me to do it in 10 spokes or whatever. Now these sets can be built, and I can show people how to build them. And there's more than just one. It's the Dougherty set, the initial one that I discovered, and they're just the propagation of the doubling of the pattern inside of itself, the nesting of the pattern inside of itself. That's how you build these. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is the spherical propagation, for lack of a better term, or the spheres come outward, and each one can be considered as a gate, and they have their own unique signature, but it's replicated in a harmonic series throughout the whole thing. So anyway, needless to say, Brighton was like, dude, Clay Taylor's set that he came up with, and I couldn't even remember which one. And then he showed me this, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I put it right on top of there. And tell us about this. What is this?
A quasi.
That's an actual image of an electron diffraction image.
What? Where? What?
Go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are electron diffraction images.
Insane.
So I mean, that's an electron diffraction image of a quasi-crystal. So in a quasi-crystal, like of matter,
Do you know what quasi-crystal this is? What material they're composing this out of?
Oh, various metals. I forget right off the top of my head. I mean, you could go on Google and find out how they did it, but I mean, there are atomic arrangements in an aperiodic tiling that has this five-fold geometry, which isn't supposed to be tiled, right? Which is the whole like Penrose tiling thing, and
yeah,
and all that.
And it gets into.
I mean, it's really descriptive of how of one of the ways that Phi operates. I mean, Brighton, you've done a lot of 3D modeling lately, and you've been seeing how a lot of the Platonic solids and the contemporary tiling maths and geometries fit together. basically through squares and triangles mostly.
I've drafted a set on this.
And pentagons as well. But, dodecahedrons and icosahedrons are hard things to tile in 3 dimensions, but they are Platonic solids, and they are, they're one of the 3, 4, 5, process of tiling space. So this is an important, this is an important tiling ratio in the world, and it's intriguing to me that, it corresponds so well to light. Ultimately, like I said, it's all connected. But yes, this is the above images were actual electron diffraction images of matter, where they're projecting a beam through a 3D lattice of matter and getting a 2-dimensional image, which I then took these geometries, these ratios that I measured in light refraction, and I put them together through the rules that I had uncovered in the whole process, and it totally replicated the electron diffraction image. And I could replicate every single electron diffraction image taken of a quasicrystal by different kinds of rotations and stuff as well. And then, of course, we have, what that was showing was ultimately the way Phi is interacting with the octave, which is what this set, if you will, was of primary colors of light. So yeah, you see it right there. I mean, that's an important slide right there. It's showing us the wavelength of green, blue, and red, and its octave are basically these guiding principles that that hold the projection of a quasicrystal in it. And then below that, you see specifically drawn out in the most elementary way possible, literally, of how Phi would fit into the octave.
It's gorgeous.
Wow.
Wow.
So
there is a way to do your construct, and I've seen how you've taken an icosahedron and shown how it's magnetically most stable as an icosahedron. And from that, I thought, well, you even said, you kind of just sent this article out, and at the same time I was working in the rhombic tricontahedron and the rhombic hexacontahedron. And I've discovered, if you know what a Sierpinski icosahedron is?
Yeah.
So you take the equilateral triangles and you turn them into Sierpinski triangles. I might have pull it up for viewers.
It's the subdivision of these Platonic solids will yield all the other geometries of tilings that you can have.
Yeah. Now, if this does model, combining all of these, I've drafted 2 videos, and they do the exact same tiling, but with different compositions. So this is your exact lattice, but it's with a dodecahedron and icosahedrons. Well, they're not technically regular dodecahedrons, they're indented.
Yeah.
This whole set
this is exactly why I was like, I've got a project for you.
Yeah.
I love watching you mess around with this, and you've gotten very prolific at it, man. So congratulations, and it's valuable stuff, and it's very fundamental. And this is why I love geometry, because it is true. There's no way, there's no way this is made up by your own mind. I mean, it is, but it's natural. It's embedded into logic, and it's proven. I mean, like, these geometries are proof of how these principles operate and can operate, and the flexibility that they have.
Brighton, thank you for drawing those 2 together. I had no idea that that's what that was. Now, dude, that's amazing. Okay, now I can see the growth of
If
it.
you were to analyze all the different ratios between all these different geometries, you would just find, you know, phi is the guiding principle to them. I mean, all their ratios. And at the same time, we're utilizing the laws of harmonics as well. I mean, when it comes to irrational, you know, maths like Euler and phi and stuff, you can still apply, you know, the harmonic series to these things. You can still apply geometry to these ratios, whether it's Euler or phi or how irrational it might be. I mean, phi is considered to be the most irrational number. Euler is right there as well. I mean, buddy, I know you like Marmot Mueller's work, right?
Yeah.
Did I say his name right? Yeah, I mean, he talks about the same thing. I mean, especially with Euler's number, and he's, you know, taking the exponential logarithms and finding the harmonic stability of, you know, of electromagnetic distribution. You know, so same principle.
Yeah, he actually, the GCOM is his telecommunication thing that he was working with before, and that was like it was for security and data encryption and like high levels of security, because inside of these logarithmic chains there's an infinite amount of numbers, so you can hide something virtually in almost unfound location, because there's so many places in these waves that you can hide them and nest them. And that's the way that he was describing it, and the way that I read it was that he came up with a scale too, unified scale of matter, and put it all together. But yeah, I do like his work as well, and I'm glad that we're all doing stuff. But this is the thing. We are the people who are gonna make it happen. So it is part of our side jobs. Of course, we have our day jobs, plural day jobs, and our side jobs, because there's plural. We all know we're with prolific people or thinkers like us. It's natural in the blood. So I was going somewhere with that.
We got to make it happen.
Yes, we need to make it happen. So we are the people that are going to do this. And this is part of the whole reason I started the Universal Ones artist collective, is because we're all doing it. But sure, we all got bits and pieces and parts. But if the message would be a lot more resonant and resounding if we all did it together and spoke in numbers, and then had a place where we could almost like a think tank workshop. And that's kind of what these podcasts are turning into. They're like think tanks, because there's so much new information that's overlaying over other information. Like I love learning, and so I'm doing a big art show next year. This is the big thing that I'm doing in June. And I have artwork already from a few different artists, but I want to get a big show where each artist, like, imagine if you had, I don't know how you would want to display it, but off air, we were talking about this a little bit behind the scenes, and I think Clay was down for the idea. But if you had your work, like a bunch of your images in a big collective, like a big print, if it was on something, then people could just come up to it, you know, like even if it's printed on a canvas, it doesn't even need to be wrapped, just like printed on a canvas or printed on something and up, and people could just see it all together and put it together. I mean, you are a cartographer. You make maps. I'm a cartographer. I make maps. We as geometers, we're map makers, and we make new words. We're neologists because we find things that didn't exist before, so we have to usually make up new words for different things that we discover. We're discoverers. And on these paths of discovery that we're all on, that's what I enjoy the most, is discovery, the discovering part. It's like discovering new land or uncharted waters. Like this is discovering light. We are discoverers of light. We are navigators, you know, and we're peddling it out to the masses. This information should be free. It shouldn't have to be paid for, you know.
Like what you said originally earlier, is like art isn't illegal. You know, it's true. You know, technology can be illegal.
Technology. This is technically what I was saying is geometry right now. It's free.
Yeah.
It's not illegal. That's weird. It's really powerful. It's more powerful than almost anything that there is. Mm-hmm. And it's legal. That's scary. That's spooky. There's a lot to uncover here. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm releasing next year, and it's a game. This is going to become a game. We're all going to play, because this is how it's going to happen. We are the players in the game, and us talking and communicating, having discussions like this, roundtable discussions with other like-minded individuals. This is how we build up an army. This is how the Electric View was built, where we pick a day of the week and we just, you know, if we have a free time during that week, we just pop on the show, and you, me, and Brighton interviewing another person, like interference theory. What's his Malik? Richard, yes.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine.
Like, I mean, see, this kind of stuff would be and can be and is very progressive. There's a ridiculous amount of information I have that I've just been waiting to put in books or all this other stuff, but I figured out a better way to do it. We're going to play a game. We're all going to play a big game, and the game is how to figure out what this is. And you've been playing it. This has been the game. This has been the name of the game since we've been on Earth. And some of the greatest thinkers are the geometers throughout the ages. They are the sages. They are the wizards. They're these people have often been into the secret societies, and because this stuff has been taboo and it is powerful, and there's been reasons why it is secret. But there's so much information now in this age that we're in where we can get this information out, and it's free and you can pass it around. It's starting to get exploited, and people are starting to open. Pandora's box is opening. The internet is opening Pandora's box, and we are surfing on it.
A 2-minute break. I'll be right back. You guys talk?
All right. Yeah, Pandora's box is open, and we're surfing on it.
Pythagoras coming out, and he took all the strings and started plucking them, and realized there's octaves to these. They repeat certain ratios, and said, okay, well, we got to do something with this. You know, there's a geometric perspective, and you know, playing with music really connects your brain to this geometry, to this math.
Geometry, yeah.
It makes sense that musicians are also becoming geometers and mathematicians, because it does connect your brain to that aspect.
Mm-hmm. It builds a different brain. When you're a musician, you build a different brain. Now, this is like something I've been developing on lately. It's been at the cusp of my thoughts, is that brain development, that neurogenesis. And weed does produce neurogenesis, certain types of weeds. And there are other things that produce neurogenesis, but mostly what produces neurogenesis, and I'm going to say this experientially from my own perspective, I would say, is the heightening of the senses. The senses being heightened produces neurogenesis the most, because it produces the most memories and records and revitalizes the body.
When our senses seem to be heightened, our attention span seems to drop to what's closer to the present.
Yes, and there's different ways to heighten the senses as well.
But
But when they are raised, it's when our memories are recorded. Our most fond, our most memorable experiences, and they can be raised to the point where they break. And that's you can break people. The military breaks people. There's a science to breaking people. There's many ways that you can break people. MK Ultra, yada yada. But so our senses are first off, they're heavily editing reality. Our senses are all dependent on light, all of them. Whether we like it or not, it's dependent on light. Even the creatures under the ground, even the creatures under the deep sea that get no light, they're still dependent on the light, all of their senses.
I mean, we call it light because we use our eyeballs as our number one sense organ, really. But I mean, when you say light, it's electromagnetic fields. I mean,
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that.
The sonospheres, there is a geometric relation between all these, and that's why we're calling it technically a light, because they are self-similar in many aspects.
You have to. I mean, electromagnetism is really kind of a system of different types of waves that exist together. You know, longitudinal, transverse waves, and I mean it's all the possibilities of dimension need to correspond to these fundamental interactions, laws of interaction and stuff. But you know, when we talk about sound and we try to distinguish sound from light, we've got different scales of interactions going on. But I mean, all mechanical vibrations such as sound are ultimately electromagnetic as well. You know, they're all still operating off the same principles. A lot of people are like, oh, you can't say sound is light or electromagnetism. It's a mechanical wave, but it's also it's electromagnetic as well, you know?
Yeah.
So you've got the longitudinal, you know, refraction compression waves that you were talking about. You've got the transverse, you know, spin component to those. I've always seen these as operating off of a gearing system. You know, they have to interchange with each other essentially through the laws of gearing. You know, the laws of gears are the same as the laws of harmonics.
Yes.
I mean, harmonics is a gearing system. So then actually that gives even another example, another layer of, you know, the damping ratios and why they might be important, because they kind of slip between the gearing system.
Pull up your gearing system, because I know what you're talking about.
Well, the constants are like the blood. It's like it needs a flow. It's like it is the flow. It's like the inside and outside of the toroidal and helical fields of coming off of the sources. Because they break down. I've discovered that they break down into double header helical filaments. And that's why there's actually the way that light breaks down is into double helical header filaments. And you're saying 3, so I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, but the way that I'm thinking about it is how light is submerged into an atmosphere and reemerges into life. So I guess if you want to call that negentropy or life, I'm thinking of how life from the sun breaks down using the Doherty set into these filaments that are nested in harmonies, these harmonic filaments, and each one of the filaments, each paired harmonic filament, this is what Russell was talking about, sexed filament becomes a creature. We are a number in the system, bro, and we grow into other notches, and we become different creatures, like an Empyrean. Like this gets back into like, can we create a super race? We are creating a super race already. We've been doing it. There's many superhumans walking all over the planet. But I digress, and I was going towards a certain direction with that. Now, double helical filaments. It's the same principle as the vertebrates, who are pair in two sexes. There's not a third sex that we know in the phylum of the kingdom. But there's asexual, and then there's two sexes. Anyway, these filaments are literally directly the recorded memory of what Rupert Sheldrake talks about as morphic resonance. It's the geometry of morphic resonance and consciousness. It's the same medium as light, and it all uses these different. Okay, I've developed a couple of different networks now. You have the Doherty network, and the next one that I did with the fives and the pentagons. You can do a few more of these, and all based off of all of these, you should be able to get the constructive and destructive resonant patterns for all beings. Just off of this first one that I discovered and studied for 16 years, it breaks down into this, and because of the way that energy flows and electricity or energy and currents move, or plasma filaments and filamentation happens, and lightning, it breaks down at the very tip of the leader in a double helical fashion. And we are the same way. In creatures, it can be thought of as a reanimation of light. As we come off of the sun, we are reanimated in that morphic resonance and the morphogenetic field inside of these geometries, and we grow using the same mirror properties of what light is, and that's why we have eyeballs in our senses. And
So we're talking loosely about, the double helix
polarity,
and polarity,
and dipoles and diamagnetics.
Right. I mean, there's so much to say on that. I mean, again, on one of Brighton, you got the screen right now?
Yeah, you want it?
Go back to the
Spherical refraction, primary colors.
go to the primary color. No, wait. Did you have
articles?
The light and the electromagnetic spectrum one open?
Okay.
It's one of the featured posts, or just scroll down a little bit from there. You could get to it from this page. Okay, or that one.
I went to your writings.
Articles.
Yeah, articles. There we go. This is what I meant to click.
Yeah.
Your page is okay. There we go. And you tell me which one?
One more. That one. Light and color theory.
I've clicked it, but it's just loading.
Yeah, you've got a lot of pages open. I mean, it's probably memory intensive because there's a million pictures on each one. So go about like halfway.
Oh. Pardon me?
Go about halfway down, I would say.
I love your page, by the way.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
There's a lot that has gone into here, and it is phenomenal to see all this work, to see all this study.
So here's one. I mean, this is where I'm talking about, my friend and kind of an OG mentor to me was John Depew. And he always talked about the three things. And he used the, oh, we're going all over the place.
I'm trying to find where I put it. Here, it's here. Sorry. I'm trying to pull these up next to each other. My computer is going a bit whack. There we go.
Yeah, he always used the term pretty loosely, because it's got so many ways to see it in the total geometry of things. Scroll down a little bit on the left one. I kind of break down some of the ways you can describe it right here. So an overview, go up a little bit. I mean, so we're talking about, if we're talking about three things, we're basically talking about like positive, negative, and neutral, right? I think these are concepts I think everybody should have in their minds at all time who work with this. But talking about positive, neutral, and negative in the broadest sense. I'm talking about micro scale, macro scale, right? We're talking about the X, Y, and Z axes, the three dimensions. Mm-hmm. Talking about, if we're talking about centrifugal force, we're talking about the yaw axis, the pitch axis, the roll axis, positive curvature, negative curvature, flat curvature, right angles, their hypotenuse, north and south pole, magnetic currents, neutral partitions. I mean, there's so many ways to look at it, but these are all the three things. I always would just kind of break it down like fundamental triangulation, but that appears out of everything that has to do with energy and dimension.
Well, have you heard, I heard on Radiolab about chirality and the peculiarity of how all matter that is living, including cheese and anything that living matter produces, is spinning in one direction, and then all other matter that is not considered living is spinning in the other direction, and as far as chirality goes. Now, if this is true, which blew my motherfucking mind, dude, you don't even know. Because if this is really true, then that means that all life is spinning in one direction. Everything living in the same direction. Everything not living, the crystals, but some crystals, crystals are living. We understand that in our sense, and Nikola Tesla said the same thing as sentiment, but this changes this should reframe how all geometry works for all systems. The input, the output, and the neutral, like you're talking about, the positive, negative, and neutral, it comes down to spin. Everything spins. There's no left, right. There's only ups. There's no ups and downs. There's only ins and outs.
Well, that's it could be broken. It's partitioned in that way, right? It could go one direction, or it could go the other direction, or it could go nowhere at all. So you could have if you're talking about helixes or chirality, you could have, you could have one wave, you could have, the opposite spin wave, and you could have, a standing wave, right? Or you could,
the importance, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the importance of this, I'm just seeing it, looking at this, just think about all of life is moving together collectively in the universe in the same chirality, or at least in our relative vicinity, with the same spin orientation. So we're wound and bound. You add to the fact that we're antenna, we're crystalline water antenna, basically, and that means I don't know. It's just like there's a collective there. There's a nest there. There's substance.
I would like to. I definitely need to. We will need to find that article. I would like to reference that.
Yeah.
If that, I've never heard that all life was spinning in one direction, but I mean,
No, light, not light.
life. That's what I said.
Yeah. So okay, good. Just making sure we made sure that. All right.
Yeah. Now check this out. A good way to understand magnetic fields is like, okay, if all these atoms of things living or something or whatever this might be are spinning in one direction, well, if you're on the North Pole and they're spinning in one direction and they're on the South Pole, they're spinning opposite.
Right. It would be. See, that's the weird way to think about it, but it doesn't matter because whether it's spinning in one direction or not, it's still alive. So it's still the same chirality.
I wanted to
It's more of a view of an example of how spin in one direction, like let's say the right hand rule, on a sphere will go through all, all the full. I mean, it's representative of what a magnet does in general. Of what
look at the Earth
pole is.
and its ley line grid. Whether ley lines are true or not, but there's some strong evidence for them with how they match up with pyramids. And where they match up with pyramids, it makes a dodecahedron. And the other vectors of the grid make an icosahedron that overlays. And so it makes a rhombic tricontahedron. And so in relation to these grids, you have a spiraling, moving rhombic tricontahedron moving around the sun. And in relation to these grids, that's exactly what these light honeycombs, these electrical constructs that we were looking at with the tiling structures.
They're bridges, light bridges.
Yes, and they're all based on these Phi ratios.
And you add in Gary Lisi's work with the E8 and his crystalline lattice structures.
Oh, the E8 is crazy. The E8 is, and I was reading it's composed completely out of platonic solids up to the 8th dimension. That's absurd. No other solid, just platonic solids only.
Yeah, it's some good stuff. And there's a research center that really has gravitated towards him. I think it's actually quantum gravity, or what is it? Quantum gravity research, or
yeah.
I've met with them before. Yeah.
Boson.
But I like the direction that they're taking stuff as far as the animation of the progression of this, because it is a progression. We all understand that life is a progression. It's a progression crystal. We are a progressive crystal. But
yeah, a lot of Brighton, you were talking about ley lines, and then we're talking about projection. That's a pretty big part of, what I've been investigating for a long time. I mean, as we see, just for example, in the last article we were looking at with the quasi-crystal tiling and stuff. But spherical projection, I mean, it's again something that John Depew was describing with some of the geometry that he was sharing, and spherical projection is critical to electromagnetic theory and atomic theory. I should share a little bit of my screen. Let's see what happens here.
I just like the words that they use. Particularly, what do they call it? It's growing. It's an aggregate. It's words not coming to me.
Just to pull up some work of John Depew's on here.
I don't know if we're gonna. I want to show some of the maps I've got.
You're trying to figure out how to screen share?
Oh, I can't do it while you're doing it.
Okay. No, that's not. I'm trying to figure this out.
Go to the share button
Share.
and say like stop sharing or something.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, right here. No, that's a new share. Yeah, it's stop share. There we go.
Okay. Do you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous. Wow. That's octagonal.
Going on here. Yeah, I mean, so these are like, let's say you put a sphere in the center of you. Okay. Let's say you're standing inside of a geometry or a lattice of magnets or stars or whatever you want to imagine. And there's a sphere surrounding you. You know, what would that projection look like on a sphere? So, I mean, this is kind of essentially.
Are we talking about our own bioelectric field?
Well,
Is it like a sphere surrounding us?
um, yes. Well, every atom, every, you know,
Or how an atom.
like Indra's net or something. I mean, these are all like old ways of thinking about it. But a lot of what I think about often is the holographic principle, you know, and that works a lot on, through the laws of projection and everything, all the information of the world surrounding us.
Yeah.
And anyways, spherical projection is a really fascinating world,
So that's this. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, here's like one of the most like basic projections you can get.
Is that a tetrahedron in spherical projection, or what is this?
This would just actually be like a triangle or a square. This is basically a projection of a right triangle, essentially, and its hypotenuse being green right now. I kind of pulled this just by observing what John Depew was doing, and kind of experimenting it on my own. Josh Tom's also a friend of mine. He did really awesome animation with this kind of stuff. But it's always stuck in my mind as I'm reading through physics and reading through math and, reading through the holographic principle or, all sorts of electromagnetic theory. Every star around us its light is being projected into us, relative to our own sphere of being, so like you could map the world's electromagnetic fields upon you. I mean, it would be enormously complex, which is essentially what, a lot of quantum theorists like Leonard Susskind and even actually Nassim Haramein's stuff, like his math is all based upon projection. Whenever you get into the Planck Planck mathematics and stuff, I mean, all these holographic projection, maths and ways of looking at things, they should line up to.
And we put it in like a stereographic projection where you cut a hole in the top and you put a light down into it, and it makes a pattern on the floor. Would it fold?
Yeah, if you were to reverse this process, you could totally shine a grid onto something. It's hard to put into words. There's so much to say about these kind of things, but I just wanted to show you some of these spherical diagrams. Of course,
it has a sort of. See, I'm seeing. Can you go back like 3? One more. Yeah, it's great. Oh, go forward one more. The other way. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, so I'm seeing how there's it spins two opposite ways, although it's one curvature. But uh,
Correct.
are you seeing the way that the poles work in this sort of fashion, like a projection where it works in a function of something like this, a tiling function?
Sorry, I kind of missed what you just asked, sort of, but I think, like, I want you to think of a magnet, a sphere magnet, when you're looking at this.
Yeah.
Um, and you see the polarity that's built into it as
Okay.
a natural process of mapping like a grid onto a sphere through projection.
Yeah.
Um,
Seeing this as the Earth as well, though, where in Australia you flush the
the
toilet.
Earth, the Earth is a magnet, yeah, in space. Um, yeah, one of my favorite books ever. If you could see my screen, is written by William Gilbert, called De Magnet, and they consider him the first scientist. He was the first to actually coin the term electricity, and he explained how compasses worked, and he worked it out to a profound degree of accuracy. I mean, he was a serious, true genius, and he studied the Earth on scale down onto large spherical magnets and lodestones. And reading this book taught me a lot of what I know now about magnetism. I mean, I recommend everybody to read. This is like the origin of Western science.
Yeah. I've never even heard his name. Thank you.
It's the origin of, I mean, he's considered the first scientist. But you study, I mean, it makes me just laugh my guts out when we were talking, to flat earthers. Like, man, you should study what magnetism is, and how the Earth is a giant magnet. But the way the compass functions on the surface of the Earth.
Call it one more time.
De Magnet, written by William Gilbert.
Thank you.
This dude right here, this cat.
I thought you said dead magnet the first time you said it.
Oh, no, De Magnet.
Yeah.
De Magnete, however you want to say it.
Looks like he was a bigger fella, judging by the photo.
I think he's just got a lot of clothes on.
Is that clothes? I thought that was like his necking or something. I don't know. I couldn't see it.
Yeah, no, that was one of those old like ruffly necking things. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I was gonna say, yeah, there's those Buddha type of wise men that are big, but there's also the slender type of wise men. I don't know, just something to observe.
Totally.
The maximum range of the sun is 550 hertz, and then the eye is like 555 hertz, which is the center of green. And there's this relation between phi and 1. How exactly does that work? What do you mean by like the sun's maximum field, or I can't quite remember how you called it, but its maximum potential was a 550 hertz. No, pardon me, nanometers.
Okay. Hold on. Should pull up that page.
I'm curious as to what the neutral is too. I was seeing it, but I was trying to envision the neutral. Like in a filament, maybe the center, because everything's hollow. I'm finding everything's hollow.
Loading.
It's right here. I've got it right up.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, it's on my screen. It's showing right now.
Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah, I mean, this is the center of our visible spectrum. I mean, if you were to take the whole range that humans can see, um, right smack dab in the middle is green. And this is also the middle output beam of refraction, you know, where it sits in between red and blue, distributed by a Phi ratio as the difference between the length of the wavelengths.
Dude.
I believe you also had one of these that showed the ratio not just of the human eye spectrum, but it expanded that further from infrared was 1, and then ultraviolet was 5.
Can you?
Yeah, that's in the other article.
Can you keep it here for 1 second?
Absolutely.
I just have a quick anecdote. So, dude, those colors in the color spectrum, the center, where they kiss, I guess in between. Oh wait, no, never mind. I was just looking at the colors, you know, right where the 1 is. See where the 1 is?
Yeah.
Right straight up from that. Yeah, right there.
Like
right there.
I
was looking at that color, and then I was looking over here at the other color straight above that, and those are like my 2 favorite colors, right around those 2 shades.
Orange and blue thing here, dude. I love those colors.
Yeah.
Are we talking about, you talking about cyan and orange or red and blue?
Cyan and orange, or orangish pink coral, you know.
Yeah.
Seafoam green.
Actually, that's totally true of me as well.
We're naturals. We would wear monk if we chose a garb. We would look like monks.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Coral and turquoise.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are my colors. Those were our wedding colors. You know, it was all coral and turquoise.
Yeah. Now we're hitting on some heartstrings.
This guitar was built by David Enke, a friend of mine, master instrument builder, and really knows the laws of music as well. He's a genius. We built it together. He built it by hand. I designed it.
It's a beautiful guitar.
Gorgeous.
It's sexy. Oh yeah. That's your love?
I was thinking the other day, guitars are worth a lot of money, depending on who's behind it playing that guitar or who made it. You know, they're like part of the masterpiece of the artist.
Oh, look at the colors again. Look at that.
Yeah. See, that's why I noticed it, and I was saying that earlier. You're with your cup, your orange cup you had. That's the color of my my not cutlery, but plates and bowls and dishes.
Unanimous. It's unanimous.
So you know, as I described in that article, I mean, part of the trip was it's like, well, here right in the center of, you know, the middle wavelength that is at the center of this refraction process phenomenon. And also, not only is it at the center of refraction phenomenon from the sun, but it's also the center of our visible range. Like that was kind of interesting. And then to see that it basically corresponded right there, pretty close to the peak wavelength of the sun. Actually, this 550 nanometers is off. I don't think it's that accurate. I did pull that from a resource like hyperphysics.com or something, but I think as I've surveyed more, it's a little bit lower there than that, maybe like 510 or something. But I mean, on the grand scale of the electromagnetic spectrum, I mean, it's
Green.
it's green. Yeah, it's still green. And it's at, by the time you get down to sea level, as I recall, it was even closer, because there's more and more absorption that happens on the planet the further you get down into sea level. Actually, that diagram that you were talking about, buddy, on the other article, the primary colors of Phi article, the first image, describes that process.
From infrared to the
primary colors of Phi. I think you already have it open in another screen.
Okay. Oh, the primary colors of Phi. I see right here it says the primary, so hopefully this is it.
Yeah, you're right.
If it loads. If it loads.
You got one too many.
I'm trying to work with all these pages, trying to keep it open.
At the top of that page, right?
Yeah, at the top of that page.
This is the primary colors of Phi. This right here, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean green is representative of that. I mean, the leap here, the article is ultimately about.
This is exactly what I was looking for. This is exactly it. Yeah, where it shows from all the way down. The gamma rays, the X rays, the secondary cosmic rays, and you show not only just what's visible in our light and its relation to Phi between blue and red, like Walter Russell was all about that blue and red, but you show even further how it goes all the way back to beyond radio waves, beyond infrared. It is all the way through the infrared zone. Phi, what we see, and then and that's all that we know so far.
And then it becomes dark, and then it becomes dark mode plasma. No, because we can't see ultraviolet. It becomes a bunch of other stuff. What does it become? Does it cycle? Is it cyclical? Is the electromagnetic spectrum cyclical?
They're different wavelengths, I mean, ultimately there's a preference there between the potential electromagnetic reactions that can happen on the quantum level that create these photons and these waves in the first place.
Yeah.
Through redistribution of standing wave forms, geometric standing wave forms. Brighton, go to the top of this page.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like you're saying, maybe it was created, maybe it's all created at the quantum, at the smaller level, the Planck scale?
Planck scale to me is, it's I don't know if it exists as, as a particle or anything. Like Planck scale seems to be a harmonization mathematical value that works in aligning physical constants. So it is absolutely important, and it does allow us to do accurate maths that physically correspond to nature. It's a natural unit of measurement that we've deduced. Is it a particle or anything? Is there a Planck particle?
Well, there's Planck everything. There's Planck length, there's Planck time, there's Planck. It's just the smallest measurement of volume or whatever we're dealing with.
Yeah, it's our preferred quantification of measurement, as I kind of say in the opening of this article.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of where we were kind of discussing here. I mean, this image kind of describes it. I mean, you've got the, down to the microcosm, up to the macrocosm, this logarithmic scale that we see here, and then where light fits into it. Actually, this was a big homework assignment, this image, it's big enough to be blown up on a wall. You know, it's huge.
Yeah.
All my images actually, they're giant. They could be. I don't see any reason to create a small image, but you know, once you get it onto a website, it's reduced in quality, of
Yeah.
course. This one describes the varying qualities of absorption of our planet, and then how far down certain wavelengths will make it as it transmits through our atmosphere.
Ooh.
Ultimately, and you see how all the different wavelengths in that frequency range, how they all react, you know. So there's different elements in our atmosphere are absorbing different wavelengths, you know. As you get down, basically at sea level, the peaks, you know, the peak wavelength that survives is like the center of the visible spectrum. So
I thought it was blue light, right?
no, green.
Green light in the water?
Well, no, here at sea level. Yeah, here at sea level.
Oh, at sea level. Okay. And then in the water, it's blue, right?
I forget. I think it was, might have been, oh, what makes it furthest? It might have been blue, maybe.
Isn't, yeah, because blue's the shortest, so it carves deepest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that is also like, you know, that's what our eyes are tuned to also, ultimately. So then what was really interesting was that this value, this wavelength value, is basically right there at this intersection of the speed of light equation, where the wave length and the frequency number was the same one in terahertz and nanometers. So, I mean, if you've read the article, you would have pointed that out, but you know, the 547.5333 dot 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 is the same number in wavelength and the same number in frequency, right there at the center of our visual spectrum, which was, as I described in the article, like a synchronicity I could not ignore. That to me was extremely coincidental.
Say that again. Reiterate that again.
Yeah, one more time.
So an electromagnetic wave has a wavelength and it has a frequency. You multiply those together and you have the speed of light. So you could, if you have the wavelength and you're talking about an electromagnetic wave, you could deduce its frequency by, you know, dividing by the speed of light, or, you know, doing simple, most basic equation you could possibly have. It's extremely profound.
Clayton and Taylor's?
What?
Didn't you call them Claytons and Taylor?
Yeah, you know, I was having a little bit of fun with it. I was like, well, you know, when I was, you know, when I was doing this math, I was using the center of our visible spectrum and the center output beam of refraction and this value that was centering our units of measurement between time and space, timing and spacing, to explore light and the speed of light. There's actually a part 2 of this article. Anyways, as you go, you know, further down the article and we go into the maths, I'm expressing these all in terms of what I called Claytons and Taylors, because I was like, well, I'm dealing with basically a new unit of measurement. I'm using this center wavelength of the sun at sea level that we're tuned to as the unit of measurement to do all this math, right? So humor me, I called it the Clayton and the Taylor, but
nice. But that's why
one Clayton times one Taylor equals the speed of light, you know. So
you asked earlier why I named it the Doherty set. That's because that's my last name. So same thing. Yeah, there should be an origin. I like when the origin fits with the creator, you know, or the originator of the idea.
Excellent. Yeah, I see why. No reason why not. Right.
Right.
But it was a thought experiment, you know. Originally, I was like, well, and there's more for me to discover within, you know, this frequency. And I don't mean to say that it is of universal significance. Like, I don't think you can take this unit of measurement and apply it anywhere where it's as equally important. You know, I think this is a very Earth-based measurement that corresponds basically to the human being and the size of our planet. There's actually a like follow-up article. I mean, I've already written it. I just haven't had the time to put it online or anything, that I'll do next, where I actually go into this unit of measurement and look at it in kind of a, you know, on Statian type of way, you know. I would say maybe, you know, it reminded me very much of Secrets in Plain Sight. I was kind of like, oh, let's see what this, like, how this fits into all, you know, these measures of our planet and stuff. And it was pretty intriguing. But basically, using this sun and earth-based, you know, value that we get out of refraction, and seeing how it corresponds to the size of the planet, and you know, precession, and all these dynamics of our home. And it was pretty interesting. But I guess more to come on that. I'll have to share that article first. But you know, ultimately, when we're talking about light, we're talking about these electromagnetic and atomic interactions between matter, and how it shares and neutralizes its energy between the rest of the universe. And just studying that speed of light equation is pretty, I mean, it's about as simple as an equation can get. I mean, similar to like F equals ma and things like that, or equals, all these fundamental equations are basically two things multiplying and equaling a third. And then all of math fits together in that way. I mean, it's, so what I gotta say is that the speed of light is pretty intriguing, and it's describing both timing and spacing of electromagnetic waves and interactions with the speed and the velocity. So it's hard to put math into other terms beyond that, but that's where math really explodes, and where, you know, where you could start to read these equations to see what they're talking about. But putting time and space together in one equation that describes a velocity of relativity, gotta hand it to nature.
Well, speaking of time and space, what do you say we wrap it up here and float into another episode on a different time? I hope we might be able to have you back again on, if not, because we're going to try to do like a weekly thing here. Who knows? We're still in the beginning format of it, but we would love to have you on again, is what I'm saying.
Awesome, guys. Yeah.
Dude, your work is phenomenal, and it's really pushing the our understanding right to where it needs to be, so we can perceive it. We know this stuff, you hear it in school, but then like you get a little older, you wonder about, man, everything is light, and then you start getting back into it. Wherever you're at in your path, and anybody, this information, it's timeless, and it's accurate. And like Clay was saying earlier, the geometry, it's the most sound of all mathematics that there is, because it's the only way that you can prove something. You can't prove it using other mathematics. You can only abstract, but the only way you can prove things is through geometry, and that goes all the way through into science and all the other fields. So it's interdisciplinary, and it's an interdisciplinary approach, and that's what we're all about on the show, and but bringing it back to geometry, from an interdisciplinary approach.
I must ask if you are selling these as this photo in particular as a poster.
I need to.
Yeah, do it.
Oh, it's beautiful, and it's brilliant too. I love. There's
You
something
know,
looking at it.
do you know Staples? I mean, they do great work. It's not like it used to be, and it's relatively decent prices around me, at least.
Oh yeah.
24 by 36. It's about, if you get the decent paper, $30.
Right. There's, I've done them before for fundraisers and stuff, for others.
Oh, right.
I try my best to share art freely, but when it comes to producing something that's tangible that someone should have there, I need to provide that more often. And there's online tools for me. I mean, I'm sure I could just sign up to some service and let people click and buy and have them shipped automatically in a nice thing. I mean, like I said, all this stuff, it's detailed enough to be printed on the side of buildings. So I really need to open it up more to get posters out there. I just have yet to set that part up. So, but I should do that because, and to that point as well, like, it would be great to put some choice pieces together for your show. I love the idea. I love when artists collaborate. That's what makes the world go around and worth living.
Awesome. That would be great. We would love to have some of your artwork up. And it's going to be a big show, and it's all going to be about light and the geometry of life, and mostly light, and what is light, what's the geometrical structure of light. So that'd be great to have you. And I mean, after it's all said and done, a print like this, you'd have to charge at least $80, to make it worth your time, because of, at least for a 24 by 36, because you got shipping, then you got all the other stuff that comes with it, and time and energy and going to the store. So I got to get set up with the same kind of thing. And so does Brighton. We all collectively as artists need to start selling more prints. So on the universal ones, I have a website, and we're going to make a store where we sell not only our work, but the work of all the artists that we sponsor as well. And I'm not asking anything from anybody. I just like spreading the ideas and the imagery out there. So when the time comes, I am going to need something, and it's going to come sooner rather than later, so I can collect all the pieces. And if you want to push the game, come out with a new piece, that would be even more thrilling, because that would add more attention to the event itself. I'm going to be pushing more new material, and also doing my book. I'm coming out with the first series of my book, 2020. So it's going to be an event I'm going to hype up, and all the electric universe is all going to be right there, in the same area. So a lot of heads to turn, and you could possibly look into doing a presentation if you're into some of that electric universe stuff, because it gets deep and goes down a lot of rabbit holes. But as far as electric geometers, there's very few and far in between, and you got already what's going on, and you already have developed, like, my coordinate system is a vortical coordinate system. It's vortex based. Your units that you came up with are a different type of unit, but either way, we have our ideas, and they're all coming together collectively. So when would be another, I don't know, I'm not going to set another appointment just yet, but our meeting or hangout. It was awesome getting to know you and seeing your personality, letting your true colors fly out, letting all of our true colors fly out. We got to see our colors. We're like, hey, wait, we all like those. Maybe there's a reason why. I guess what I heard is one of them's the coldest and one of them's the hottest, the warmest color, and one of them's the coldest, what I learned in my color class. And that might be why we're attracted to them. But yeah, until next time, Clay, you got any closing remarks, guys?
I was just going to say that if we take the Dougherty set, you send me, or I can, some prints or photos that I can print out of the Pentagon Dougherty set, Decagon Dougherty set.
Mm-hmm.
I can take those, compose them into dodecahedrons and all these other shapes, and we can manifest that into Clay Taylor's quasi-crystal. We should do a collab, totally. And make these third-dimensional, make them physical, and then I'll send you the works, Clay, and perhaps you'll show where the proportions are over your diagrams. It's exactly the same honeycomb.
Yeah, James, actually that, or Buddy.
It's fine.
Is James your middle name then, or what is?
It is. It's my real first name and my real middle name.
Okay. That's funny because Clay is my middle name. And
Nice. Okay.
last name. Clayton, actually. Yeah, like your set, actually we never really got the chance for you to describe it precisely, but you should, if we don't have time to do that now, you should tell me, what your steps are to, you should define it for me. More specifically, I mean, I could put it onto a, wall-sized graphic, no problem. Give you the vertex file, the vector files, help you work with that. And
I can definitely do that. Yeah. I appreciate the hand or the opportunity for that. I used to work in the printing industry, signage, and I topped out in signage at maximum pay, and I looked around and I'm like, I'm running this bitch, and there ain't no more money around this. I need to change fields. So I left that entire field. I'm like, but I still have the keys to the Jeep. So I do have a shop where I can do things like that, luckily, and make large scale prints. But yeah, there's so much more to talk about. So we should definitely meet up again. And I like to dabble a little bit in the Dougherty set. We do that on this show because it's a consistent thing that we keep coming back to. It's part of the theme, relating things to that. And we're drawing people in to become part of a think tank where there is, it's kind of like a think tank. I hate to use that word, but it's more organic, and it's kind of like how the electric view happened, and where people collectively came together, discussed ideas, and it's fertile ground. It's fertile breeding ground for new ideas. And every time when we come together, brand new, ideas that people haven't, or connections that we haven't thought of before, manifest.
Well, there's so much to talk about too. I mean, it's kind of just evident by this one conversation where we scratch the surface of one of my research projects and it takes up all these hours, and there's so many other topics, there's
Right.
so many models, so many other people to proclaim and ideas to correlate with one another, that there is a lot of conversation. I think it's what I appreciate you guys doing this. Like I said, the world is built upon actions. We all, I've spent a lot of time in my own mind, and I've shared a little bit of that online for others to see, but the world isn't necessarily built on me just thinking alone by myself, or any of us. So it's good to see, when there's positive communication like this, that others can access, if they choose to. Ultimately, it's a worthy thing to discuss because, as far as I'm concerned, it's the purest. It's geometry. It's physics,
It's clean.
math. It's clean.
Yeah.
It's there's opinions involved, but they're all truly pure. Pure intentions, and it's illuminating. Everybody wants to know how they fit in, how things work, where they come from, what they are, how the world operates, where they're going, where they came from, and they want to learn. We described a little bit about how we all like to learn, but this is a positive thing when people make these discussions, and I like that it's here for people to see, and hopefully it inspires people who, in some way, shape, or form, rather than being some other sort of form of negativity that you see online, which is unfortunate. But this is a positive thing to share and communicate with, and hopefully it does some good and contributes in a way to other people's lives.
I'm glad you added the positivity to it. I can't stress enough that, I'm sure people just can tell naturally that I ooze of positivity. It's part of what holds this all together, and being thankful, gratitude, positive attitude, positive outlook. And
watching.
What's that, Brighton?
Love is watching.
Love is watching. It is. And that can be threatening to people at times, and it should be, because we aren't as free as we like to think we are. There are repercussions for our actions, and there is the golden rule that I think everybody believes in, fundamentally somewhere, because it's the most obvious of all of them. You start to collect negative energy, and it releases.
And the golden rule is my religion. It's the thing that unites everything that is morally good. Always, that's why they call it the golden. I've got a song in my next album that's called Golden Rule. Someday I'll share it with people.
Nice. All right. Until next time, Brighton, you want to give the outro? You did the intro. Let's do it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. It was a wonderful chat. And phenomenal time. We have a Facebook channel, Love is Watching. You can find the Dougherty Set Network on Facebook. And you can also find The Electric View. Some of our works are there. Thank you.
And Clay Taylor's work can be found at claytaylor.com, right?
Yeah. Art of Clay Taylor.
Art of Clay Taylor. My bad. Art of Clay Taylor. Yeah. All right. Well, that's a wrap, gentlemen. This has been a good time, a good first time using Zoom. I don't think I'll ever go back to that Skype scrap. Just sounds like scat. It's like, good Lord.
Yeah.
All right. Have a wonderful evening. And until next time, we'll chat.
All right.
All right. Love you guys. Peace.
Yeah.
All right. There it is. Episode 2. The Brighton Buddy Show. The Brighton Buddy Show is Love is Watching production. Thank you for watching. We have wonderful episodes coming up where we get into hyperbolic shapes more. We're getting into the helix on the next episode, and how everything is helical on many different scales.